Hello, I think I am live. There we go. Yes, I do believe that I am live. So, hello to anybody who's out there. And thank you for joining. Hi, Kara. So nice to see you. Such a hot day out there, so it's kind of a nice day to be in. So I'm just going to wait a second. I want to make sure I've got, it's been a while since I've done this. We haven't done this since April. So, is my voice okay? My sound is good. You can hear me okay. And I think my lighting is good. So, okay, well, we will get started. So I'm just going to quickly go through the sketches that I've done over the last, well, basically it's going to be since our last Sketchy Saturday. So I did something a little bit different. I got a little bit tired of doing all the animal sketches, so I decided last month that I would do some ink sketches of the Harry Potter movie. I was watching Harry Potter, and so this is something that I really like to do, just quick little 5-minute scenes. So I watched the movie over the course of the week, half an hour here and there, every day or so. And so these were the 5 sketches, one, two, three, four, yeah, 5 sketches that I did over that week, 5 minutes each. So that was sketch 109 to 113. So I'm still trying, I am keeping up with my daily sketches. Sometimes it is a real effort to get them done, but and then the next week I watched the second movie. It's been a long time since I watched Harry Potter, and I really wanted to go through the movies again, so just quickly did a bunch of little sketches there. So I'm getting a message here on my windows, and hopefully that doesn't affect anything. So those were from April 24th to the 30th. So those were those. And then this here, let me just see if I can zoom back in a little. There we go. So that's the sketch that we did on our last Sketchy Saturday, which was April 16th. And then I did continue with my animal sketches most days. Oops, it's stuck together here. Some of them are very, very sketchy. Those squirrels. Another very quick little squirrel. Kind of a horsey unicorn. I think that was a fox. And a parrot and a goldfish. A lot of these most of them are taken off of Unsplash. That was a cat and a toucan. Polar bears. And again, these are take me next to no time, about 5 minutes. Not even sometimes. This is probably like a 2-minute sketch. Whale, dolphin. And I felt like drawing people, so I did a couple of those the other days. And then, so today we're going to be doing something very similar to what this thing looks like. This is a little bit less time. And then that was my sketch from yesterday. I just took a picture of, well, actually I have it right here. Hopefully I won't knock everything over. Sketch of my grandson and his little puppy. So I decided to do that. Okay, so we're going to get going today. I just marked off my page so that I know how much room I have. Let me get my reference back up here. So we are going to be doing this little bird, which you should be able to see down at the lower right-hand corner. This one is what we're going to be doing. So we're going to be using, you can use any pencil you have, really. I'm going to use if I can find it, an HB. Well, got an HB pencil. And so basically, just as always, I'm just going to see if I can find something to weight this paper down. There we go. My pencil sharpenings. Okay, so there we are. So the way I'm going to start this is I'm looking at the shapes. So I did crop that original picture so that it's focusing just on that one bird. So I've got the branch that is going to come up on a complete diagonal, 45-degree diagonal, and then I've got the bird going almost at a 45-degree diagonal the other way. So I'm just looking at the reference and getting an idea of the overall shape. And if I look at the head, if I forget the tail of the bird, but just look at the head and the body coming to the back of the wings, it's a kind of a very rounded triangular shape. So I'm going to start with his little beak, which is just a little, I'm trying to get the angle, I'm just looking at the angle, more or less the angle and the size of it. And then his head is very, very rounded. But basically, I want to look at the overall shape of this bird. Is very much a triangle, kind of like this, a rounded triangle. So I'm looking at angles. His breast comes down to where the branch is. And right where the branch comes underneath here is where he starts to go up. And that's almost 245-degree angles, sort of like that. And then the head, rounded, very rounded. And I'm drawing very lightly so that I can change my lines afterwards if I need to. And that's going to come down and connect with that back line. So I've got something shaped more or less like that. So I'll just give you a second to catch up with that. And in the meantime, I'm going to put this branch in. So this is the back end of the branch, is almost exactly where the end of his body is here. Just sketch that in. The front end is just a little bit further up. And then it's going to come out behind him. And we can worry about that after. Okay, so I've got my basic shape in there, and then that his wings at the back come out just slightly, like that. And then his tail. So if I'm, okay, let's go back actually to the head here. We're going to get the little beak shape correctly. Very much of a, not, it's a rounded point, so it's not super pointy. It's not like a needle point at the end. And I'm just going to look at my reference closer. So with birds, almost all birds' eyes are in a line with their beak. So if you look at this guy, his eye, if where his beak opens, there's a middle line there that we can't really see very well in the picture. But if you bring an imaginary line back, the eye will sit, generally speaking, for most birds on that line. Not all birds, but most. So even if you can't really see your reference very well, you can have a good idea of where you're going to put that eye. And it's a very, very round eye. And it's kind of more or less the same size as the beak. Just going to put a little round, about the same size as this beak. And then he's got the shading. And we can just very, very lightly come under the eye here, right back to, we're looking at angles here, trying to mimic that same angle. So it's going to be something like that. I'm just going to check that there's no questions. If anybody has any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. That's why I'm doing this live as opposed to recording it. I would love to have your interaction. So if you do have any questions, just ask. I'll try and remember to keep checking. So then I'm going to put this little black. There's a little bit of a space here between the two. I'm going to put a little black down here. So as soon as I come down, I've got this angle correct. It's coming down the right angle, but I can immediately see I don't have enough room here. It's actually much wider, which means this angle is off. So I'm going to just correct that, give him a little bit of a fatter body coming down here. And continue and just correct that angle if you need to. Okay. And I can come in here with my kneaded eraser, just take that out and correct this line. There we go. I'm just gonna zoom in. Oopsie, I just unfocused is what I did, sorry. Oops, okay, sorry. I'm trying to get my focus back off a little bit. And zoom in a little bit. There we go. Hopefully that is focused. Sorry when I touched the wrong button here. Let me see if I can actually refocus it a little bit better. I think that's good. Looks focused to me. If it's not, let me know. Because I'm actually, the technology of all this stuff is challenging for somebody who's not terribly techy. Anyway, so I've corrected that angle. So now I'm also looking here. He's got white. This is all white down along his belly area. This area here is all going to be white. And from the end, so this ends at the same distance back as that. So again, when I'm sketching or drawing something, I'm always just comparing these angles. And I correct as I go along if I have to. If it's a sketch, I don't worry too much about it if I'm off. But the sketching and doing these angles is what really helps to develop your eye over time so that you can be so that you're able to see these things. So I'm just going to join that in a kind of a very sketchy little line here. Again, I'm looking at the angle. It's kind of more or less a 45-degree angle. Just coming up here. And that's where his brown feathers are. And they kind of come down. I'm not going to actually draw them. I'm just going to do a little bit of shading. They come down about that kind of a length. And then right down at that kind of a length is where his wing starts. The wing that's on this side of his body. And that comes down in a rounded kind of a shape. And I'm looking again now, the distance between here. And if there's not enough distance, you might have to adjust your lines. But that's coming down rounded. It goes almost exactly horizontal, right back to the end of the body. So that's going to give you basically the wing shape there. And then again, I'm just kind of very, very lightly shading in where these very fine brown feathers are, just to give me that shape. And right around sort of well, actually, it would be the same distance as this part of his body. This is way too long, so this should have started up here, actually. I can see that when I go back to here that this is too long, so I'm just going to readjust that. And if you need to readjust, go ahead. So then the wings, where the wings start or end rather, is almost in line with that same little black shape. So that's how I'm getting that distance. And they come down, not horizontal exactly, just slightly down, so that they're coming in a bit of a triangular shape. And they're not quite, they're hidden actually underneath the wings that come on top. So I'm not going to finish that part for now. And then his tail, I think we'll leave his tail for now. Okay, this part of his body is all feathered. Am I going too fast, too slow? Would you like me to slow down? Is it a good speed? And can you see what I'm doing? Is anybody out there? Okay, so I'm just gonna give a little bit of feathers here. And that gives me my shape. This here is actually a little bit too pointed. It should be a little bit rounder, but we'll worry about that later. Okay, then on the back of his body is where those wings come in. Now, so right underneath here, you've got these little brown feathers coming out. A little slower. Okay, perfect. I will slow down. I will try and talk about other things to let you catch up. So I moved my studio. Oh yeah, so one of the reasons that I moved my studio from the basement up to our what used to be our guest room and is now my new studio is because in the summertime with the air conditioning on, and it's very, very hot here in Ottawa today. It's like 34 with the humidity Celsius. So when we have the air conditioning on, the basement, which was my old studio, gets so cold. It's too cold for me to work down there. So I decided, and so not only that, but the other thing is come spring and summer, there's a lot more bugs down there, especially spiders, and I don't like spiders. So moved up here thinking, okay, no more spiders. Well, I'm in the studio up here yesterday, just futzing around with stuff and look up on the wall and there's a spider right in front of me on the wall. So I screamed, I jumped back, and as I screamed, the spider jumped like right out towards me, but I was far enough away he didn't come on me, but he landed in a bunch of stuff. So I took half my studio apart trying to find the damn thing. Couldn't find him. He was gone. I don't know where he was, so I couldn't find him. So I'm sitting here looking all over my shoulder the whole time. Couldn't find him. So I come into the studio this morning and there he is, right back on the same spot on the wall. So I went and got hubby and he got him for me and stuck him outside. He was able to be grabbed and has his new home now outside, not in my studio. But it looks like I'm not escaping the bugs up here. It's that time of year. Okay, so we're going to start back on these feathers in the back. So this shading here, these little brown feathers. Now, if I was doing this as a drawing, which I'm not, it's a sketch, so it's different. But if this was a drawing, these little brown feathers here are so delicate and so fine that I would use a very hard pencil. I would probably use a 9H pencil to scratch those in and give them that very fine look. But this is a sketch, so we're not doing that. So I'm just looking basically at the angle here that this first feather, this first little rounded feather is coming down like this. something like that. And it's got the vein right there in the middle. And then the other ones, it's overlapping all the ones that are coming down underneath it, which also overlap the feathers that are underneath. So as you're going along, well, either as you're going along or at the end, one or the other, you can erase this line. Actually, I'll just pull it out because we're going to be bring it all up with these feathers that are, so you're trying to get mainly the angle and the length and how much they are showing. But even that doesn't really matter because depending on how that bird is sitting or moving, that will change. So just if you get the angle or the amount of feather that's showing incorrect, you don't have to worry about it. So I'm trying to count these feathers. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that are almost one on top of each other, and 6. And then the next ones come out a little bit further. Oops. A little bit further. Oops. And a little bit further. It doesn't have to be exact. They're going to come out on the tail. So that you end up with something like that. And then once you've got that in, we can come back here at the very front of this wing. And we're just going to put that first little feather that's showing kind of a little triangular shape again. And then above that, but below the brown, these other very soft feathers, and they kind of come up in a line like that. And they're not very detailed, so it's hard to, the photograph is even a little bit blurred. Just make sure that you specify where the brown is on top of that. And then where that first feather comes over there, right underneath it, you've got a line of the white line that's going up underneath these other feathers. And then there's the line for where the main part of the wing is. And if this was a drawing, I would be counting these lines, but it's a sketch, so I'm not going to count the lines. I'm just going to put in the first little part, and then all the lines that are coming in here, they meet up at this last feather. They're pretty much horizontal, and I'm not going to count them. I'm just going to quickly lay them in. Gives the impression of these. Okay, now underneath here is where his tail comes out. And it comes out, you're looking at the, so if this is a 45-degree angle, this is not exactly horizontal, and it's coming out underneath this last feather. So it's coming out this way. Now I'm running out of room here, so I'm going to make mine a little bit more angled downwards, but really it should be coming out on an angle about like that. I'm going to put mine down like that because I don't have enough room. It's going to run off the paper. Whoops. And it's just a straight line. I'll try and make mine a little bit more horizontal. And you've got the larger feathers. The larger, longer feathers are for the tail. And it's thicker towards the body. So it's going to come right up under here. And it comes more also in a tapered kind of a shape. So there's your basic shape of your bird. Okay. Is everybody caught up to me? I'm just going to actually chat. Okay. You need me to slow down, or are you caught up again? Okay, I'm assuming you're good. So now that we have our basic shape in, on mine, I'm finding that this is a little bit too pointy, so I'm just going to round it off a little bit. I'm going to take my eraser. So now would be the time to go in, and if you've got anything in your shape that you don't like, now would be the time to correct it. So you can just go and double check that all your shape is correct. Oh, and we forgot his little foot. So I'm just going to put that in. And that comes out from the bottom, right on the bottom here. And birds have three. Well, not all birds, but this bird, it looks like, has 3 toes. Most of them have 3. Some have more, some have less, but most have 3. It's kind of hard to see that first one, but it's something like this. And then the second one, something like this. Usually that middle toe is longer. It's claw, and then the back one behind is comes the other way to, well, actually his nail is coming out straighter, but just something like that. It gives you the basic idea. Almost there. Okay. Okay, I'll check my messages so that give you a chance to catch up. Okay. So then what I would probably do next is I'm just going to elaborate on my branch. So I'm just using an HB pencil for this entire drawing. I'm varying my pressure, I'm varying my layers. If this was a drawing, I would be using various grades of pencil. But on a sketch, I often don't bother. I just use lighter pressures or more or less layers to get the effects I want. But it would be much easier if this was a drawing. I would be using a harder pencil to get the branch in. But I'm not going to bother. I'm just gonna put some a little bit of texture, and I'm using the side of my pencil a lot, so it's not very detailed really. And then underneath here, I'm just gonna fill that in. Okay, so now that we have the basic shape of our bird, we're going to go in and we're just going to give him a little bit of shading. And this is not going to be anything that is realistic. Again, it's just a sketch, so we just want to more or less get the feel. So and I'm just using the side of my pencil, and I'm just going to fill in with a scribbly kind of a stroke where the dark is. And again, I went a little bit too long. Doesn't really matter, but it's actually much shorter, considerably shorter. So it's about like that. And then this brown can come up. So the black will be darker than the brown area. And then the same thing on the top of his head. You do want to make sure that your head, his head is very round, almost bulbous. So make sure that you're not coming back in a too horizontal line. You want to have a nice rounded head, but make sure it's not too big. because it has to fit the size of the whole bird. And then he's got a little bit of some black feathers here. And this black comes right up to the bottom part of his beak, like so. And then I'm just gonna more or less scribble in the top part of his head, making sure it's rounded. I'm trying to keep my hand out of the way of the camera. And again, if I look here, I maybe came a little bit too far back originally, so I won't go quite so far back. And actually, if I'm looking at the reference, his feathers go in this direction. So you should try as much as you can to always go in the direction that your texture is going in. So, but again, it doesn't really matter for this. So he's got a dark head. Now he's got this eye round. Mine is more oval, but it doesn't matter. He's got a very dark black pupil right in the middle. And he's got two highlights up at the top. So I'm just going to fill the rest of the eye in. Not quite as dark, not quite as much pressure, but just to give it a little bit of a highlight there. Because the highlight is really what makes the eye come alive. Okay, and then he's got these very, very short, soft, so I'm using next to no pressure, just putting a little bit of very short little lines just to indicate that there are feathers here. I don't know if that's even, yeah, it is showing up. I'll go a little bit darker so you can see, but you would want to keep these lines very, very soft, very subtle. And again, going in the direction of the feathers. And so these feathers look like they go over top of the others. So to make it appear that the white is going over the dark, you can bring some of the dark up like that. And the same thing down here. And then here, you can same thing. The white feathers come over the tan a little bit. So just bring some of this up into there so that it just gives the illusion that it's going over top. So again, we're working in black and white, in tones of gray. We have no color. So the only thing that we can work with are the values. So you want to make sure your values are correct. So you want to make sure that your darks are dark enough to indicate that, you know, that's black. Look at this, I want to know, okay, that is black. This is black. So if you need to go back over it, and you should, if you're using a soft pencil, it should be easy. You shouldn't need a lot of pressure. So a soft pencil would be anything in the B's. This is just an HB that I've got. Okay. And then this area, this tan area, is a kind of a mid-tone. So you don't want to have it too dark, but you definitely want to have it darker than what you're going to put down here. So I'm just putting in these little lines all going around the same general direction. And that's going to, and I'm also using the side of my pencil, so they're not very detailed, but it gives me that tone that I want. Okay. And then right here, these little areas, you can exaggerate if you want the little wing, the little lines for the wing, for whatever this is. I'm not sure what they call that part of the bird. And then this fur, these feathers, these short little tan feathers go over top. This little feather down here is very dark, very black. Fill it in black. Oh, and I missed this brown feather right under here. It's more of a okay, then I think we'll go down into his body. So this is all white, so we're just going to leave it. But the rest of this is a light tan. So we want to just very, very softly, very, very gently just put some lines in here. You don't want it as dark as this, or certainly not as dark as that. But just to give it, and you want it, you can see underneath the wing here. Here's the wing and the tail. Right under here is a little bit darker than it would be down over here. So you can use a little bit more, either more layers or more pressure, whichever you prefer. And then this is all very, very light. And it's just little back and forth strokes like that. Okay. And then looking at his, I think we'll do the back part of his wings first. So these are all dark, except for the very edge of the wing, of the feather, sorry, is tipped with light, with white. So I'm just going to come back in here. And as dark as you've gone on the head is about how dark you want to go on these feathers. But you don't, and I'm using a stroke that is just back and forth like this. So the middle of the wing would have the vein of the wing going down. So let me just enlarge that for you. So say if this is the feather, like so, it's going to have the vein down this way. So from that vein is where you're going to bring your strokes out, but you're not going to bring them right out to the edge of the wing. You're only going to bring them out a little bit like that. Same thing on the other side. You can go either direction. It doesn't really matter. And you do what we will eventually, we will be making sure that middle part is a little bit darker. So you end up with something like that. Does that make sense? Okay. And you can go as dark or as light as you want, but these little feathers are quite dark. So you can put in where you would imagine that the line is, if you want, and then you just bring, and that also helps to separate those feathers. So as we get down into these feathers that are further back, you don't really see the vein running down the middle. It's hidden underneath the overlapping feather. So you can just bring the dark right out. And that gives you these separations here of the feathers right down. And you go all the way down to where these feathers are at the back, and they're a little bit darker with less light. So just something like that. And then, so that's that. And then these here, I'm just going to go over my lines dark. And I'm using more or less the side of my pencil, just in a horizontal line up to where these other feathers are. So you end up with something like that. Okay. Then the tail. Actually, this here is darker. Okay, then for the tail, I'm in a bit of an angle here, so it's quite dark. It's going to come out from underneath those feathers. And it's very dark all the way along, except for where the next feather meets it. It's also got that white outline, so you just leave a little bit of white just to kind of indicate that there's a difference there. Same thing down here. This is not two feathers, it's several feathers that are one on top of the other. So if you do a bunch of dark lines, leaving a white line in between, then you can tell that that is more than one feather. So just something like that. And then you've got a little chickadee, more or less. So if you're caught up with that, you can increase your shading down underneath the wing. And if you want, you can make your branch a little bit more interesting with some lines in it. Just some wiggly lines will give you a very kind of indicates some wood grain there. And here, same thing. So if you're all caught up and you have extra time, if you want, I'm just going to erase this. If you want, you can take some graphite powder. So if you have graphite powder, let's see here. So this is how I make graphite powder. I have this very tiny old 6B pencil, which I don't want to throw away. So I just have a little, it's a tea strainer. You could use an emery board. You could use an X-Acto knife. And basically I'm just scraping the pencil against the mesh of the tea strainer, and it gives me powder. So if you do want to make your own graphite powder, you want to use at least a 6B pencil, preferably an 8B, because it's got it has less there's less shine to it. And then you can, so once you've got your graphite powder, you can take a very soft brush. Oopsie. And I'm not going to dip my brush into the graphite powder because, as you can see here, my brush is already full of graphite. It's pretty dirty. So I generally don't clean these. If I had to, I can wash them with soap and water, but I like to use them dirty. If I need them not quite so dirty, I'll just wipe them on a Kleenex to get most of it off. And you can put some shading in with that. Well, maybe it's not as dirty as I thought it was. But I like to use the brush because it gives such a really nice and soft, a soft blend. So it just helps to give a little bit of context. There's a sky here and here behind it, kind of thing. You can also use the brush to soften some of your shading if you want. If it's really, if there's a lot of your paper showing through, you can do that. Just make sure you're going in the same direction. And that will pick up more graphite on your brush, making it darker. So now I should be getting, see, it's much darker now because I picked up more graphite. Smooth out your branch. Make sure you don't get into the whites of your animal. Just go up to the edges. If you don't have a brush, you can use a piece of cotton. This one is not terribly dirty. So you can or you can use a piece of Kleenex. The softest blend, you're going to get the softest blend with a brush. Maybe I need a dirtier one. I'll take a dirtier one. I generally reuse and reuse these. I don't throw them out. Well, I try not to throw them out until they're unusable, because you can always use them again. And that gives you a little bit of your surrounding sky. So, and I don't use something like, I will do it now because I will show you why I don't use it. But if you have one of these, or these, which I usually leave them dirty. Sometimes I clean them. You can clean them just by rubbing them against an emery board. So if I wanted to, now no matter how lightly I press, I'll go up here with, even this end is not very dirty at all. And I'm going to go very, very softly. It's going to make a liar out of me. But, oh yeah, I can see it. It's really hard to get a really soft blend. I'll show you at the other end because it's dirtier. You can see the white lines in between. So I use these quite a bit if I'm, say, doing, I wanted to make a tree in the background. So if I want to make a pine tree here, that's what I would use that for. I would actually draw with the dirty stump because it gives me a nice, just a nice soft blurred object. But to make your sky, and it's not working because it's really actually not very dirty, but it still is not giving me as soft a blend as I would get with my brush. So that's the reason that I would use a brush versus one of these. So thank you very much, guys, for joining me. And I apologize for the big length between this one and the last one. So hopefully we won't have any more issues with that. And I'll be back again in 2 weeks. I'm not sure when the next one is. Just check my calendar. Let's see. So we are the 21st. So it should be the 4th of June. We'll be back with another live. And if you want to post your little chickadees on social media or send it to me in an email or a private message, I would love to see them. So thanks very much, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. And we will be back in 2 weeks. Bye for now.